Hey, I missed that shot of a lifetime. The buck came in and I thought it was a good shot and completely missed it. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be your host today on Archery Talk 101. And we're going to cover a topic that is uh, interesting. The fact that if you don't know what your range is and how you're shooting, we're going to talk about how to determine what is your good range that you can shoot at. You don't want to take a shot and miss the target. As I kind of alluded to at the beginning, you take that shot and you missed it. Well, here's what you want to look at. Are you using multiple pins or a single pin? So let's go with the single pin first. Just because it's one, it comes first, right? So we're going to start off. We have a single pin. It's set for 20 yards. You have another setting for 30, 40, 50 yards. All dialed in. What do you set it for when you're going out hunting? If you're hunting on the ground or a tree stand or a blind, let's just go with a tree stand. You're hunting out of your tree stand. Now you're up there. You're going to have certain areas that you're going to be able to go to. So let's say you have set up for a 20-yard shot. You have your sight set for 20 yards. Deer comes in at 20 yards. You make your shot. You're good. You're good to go. Now that deer comes in at 10 yards. Well, how do you shoot? Have you practiced that? Well, you're going to have to bend it away some more, or even if you're on the ground, let's just, go from there on the ground, and because that changes a little bit different how you're going to have to aim for it because the angle going through. So if you're in a tree stand, coming closer and closer gets harder and harder shots to get further and further away. Now you got to look at how big are your groups. Okay, let's start off with, let's say 20 yards, you're able to get in a 3-inch group at 20 yards consistently, you're 3-4 inch group. Not too bad. Then you go out to 30 yards, that 3 or 4 is now 4 or 5 inch group. 40 yard, your 5-6 inch group. 50 yards, you might be a 6 or 8 inch group is what you're grouping at. So you remember, your target area is 6 inches or less. If you can't consistently hit it that 6 inches or less, that's beyond your range. So let's go back to the 20-yard range. Now, you're shooting at 20 yards. Where does your pin go if you're shooting at, say, 25 yards? Let's say you misjudge the yardage by 5 yards. Where are you grouping? So now you have your 6-inch group that you want to hit. Now you drop down a couple inches. So now half of your arrows are going to be good shots. Half your arrows aren't going to be good shots. So now you're down a 50-50 chance. Then you're only off by 5 yards. Now you go out to 10 yards. And maybe you just misjudged it by 10 yards. Now you could be completely missing that target. So that's where you want to look at, where can you consistently keep 3-inch or tighter groups? That is your ideal range. Now you're going to add 5 minus 5 yards, shoot at those ranges to see, where can you ethically keep a small target? Now, of course, with proper shooting form and technique, you can get those down to 1-inch groups, no problem, with some practice and the right coaching. I have some of that available for those interested. At the end, I'll give you some information how you can get that coaching to get to the next level in your archery skills. So back to our problem at hand is we have to know what our bow is able to do with us shooting it. Now it's all the person shooting it. It's not the bow. The bow is going to group the same. If it's shot the same, it's going to group the same every time. So whatever it is, it's going to group that. That is the way the bow is set up. Now you can have a bow that's completely out of tune and it's going to group. Not where you expect it to be, but it's going to group. So that's all just your shooting form is what's going to cause your problem. So let's go back to shooting a 30-yard shot. How big is your groups? Because you got to remember, this further away, the bigger your group's going to be. Have you practiced at 30 yards or 40 yards? So let's say you're at 40 yards and you can do a decent group. You're at 3-inch group at 40 yards. And the deer comes in at 20 yards. What's the distance between your pins? How far are you going to be off? Now, the faster the bow, the closer the pins are going to be. Not faster the bow, but more likely faster the arrow is going to be. So a lighter arrow is going to be closer pins. Heavy arrow is going to be a little bit wider pins. Your faster rated bows are going to have a little closer, but then you get lighter arrows and closer. So now what is your gap? So you want to know how your bow shoots at a specific distance when you're using the wrong pin. That's basically what you're doing. Is say it comes out at 25 yards and you thought it was 35 yards, so now you're shooting at 30 yards or 35 yards. Now where you're going to go. So that's one thing when you get out practicing. If you have the the ability to apply this technique and go out to a range and start at 20 yards and shoot your 20-yard pin and see where you group, shoot your 30, your 40, your 50, set the sight for those multiple different ranges. And now let's say you're shooting at 50 yards, you come in, you didn't make a shot. Now you have to make a 20-yard shot and you don't have time to change it or forget you didn't change it. So that's where you need to know what your capability is. If you have a 20-yard pin, how can you shoot this 20-yard pin at multiple distances and still be good? Do I aim high? Do I aim low? I found on most of my bows I've set up 20 yards, shot at 10 yards. There's 1 inch difference between the impact point between 20 and 10 yards. So at 10 yards, I don't worry about it. Now you start getting to 5 feet, that's a little different story. I shoot multiple pins, and on mine, I know that if I'm shooting at 5 feet, I have to use my 70-yard pin. Now, you say, well, why use a 70? Want to use the 20-yard pin? Well, when you think about it, where's the arrow at? The arrow lines up right with the corner of your mouth, right? Where is your peep sight and your sights clear up by your eye? Look at that distance between your corner of your mouth and your eye. That is how much further you're aiming than where it's at. So it takes a while for that arrow to merge in to where your pins are. So as you shoot, that arrow's starting to arc up to hit. So it's going through that arc, rising through the 10-yard, a little bit low, 20-yard, you're right on, and it's starting to drop back down again. It has that little arc going in there. So when you shoot at those close ranges, now you need to know, what am I going to do if all of a sudden, say you're in a blind and that deer walks out and standing right in front of your blind? How do you shoot it? Well, if you're sitting down in a chair, one of the things you want to do as you're shooting out of a blind is draw back and aim. Now look at where that tip of the arrow is. That's where it's actually going to hit. So I've seen people that go do that and end up shooting through the blind, not the part you're shooting through. A lot of them have the mesh you shoot through. They're actually shooting through the blind material itself because they didn't realize that arrow was way lower to start with. Same thing with firearms. It's the same thing. The projectile rises to meet your sight and then start dropping. That's just the way all your projectiles are. If you're just throwing a rock or a dart, you have to throw it. It has to arc up and drop into it. So everything is just a little slower, a little heavier. So that's all we have to consider is that kind of stuff. So now, what do? I recommend putting the pin at 20 yards and just leaving it there. Now, to practice to get ready for it, take that 20-yard pin, go at 20 yards, you see you're at. Go back to 25 yards, see you're at. Go back to 30, 35, 40. Where do you think is your longest shot? Now, if you're like me, hunting a lot of forest areas, you're not likely going to have more than a 20-yard shot because you're in a forest. If you're out doing a spot and stock, you might have longer shots than 20. You want to make sure you practice those shooting. Now, if you have a rangefinder, that definitely makes it a whole lot easier to determine where you're at, because you go in and says, okay, this deer is 27 yards. I know my 20-yard pin. I have to put it here to shoot at 70 yards because I need to aim a little bit high. So it might be just moving up 2-3 inches on the target, because at 27 yards, you're going to be shooting low 2 inches or whatever your distance is on there. So at that range, you have to move up a little bit and then a little bit up a little bit more and more. So that's something you want to look at when you're shooting a fixed pin. That is, well, they're movable pins, but using one pin. Now, the advantage of one pin is you don't have to worry about which pin to pick. There's times when you go out there and you're looking at all the pins. You get to pick anyone because there's 5 of them out there. And which one do I pick? And then you catch whichever one catches your eye is the one you use, and it's the wrong one. So there are some advantages to using a single pin. The biggest disadvantage I see is that if it comes at different range, you have to remember where you're at. We have multiple pins. You can kind of use your pins as a bracket to bracket where you want to shoot. So now when we get into multiple pins, you're still going to look at how your pins line up based on different ranges. Now, your 20-yard pin is right on a 20 or 30, and all of them are all lined up right where they need to be. So you don't have to worry about which, pin to use, because you have the pin, the yardage. Now, let's say you're doing the same thing. You have a target that you think is at 20 yards, it ends up being 30 yards. You can see where your 30-yard pin is going to aim, because you're aiming your 20-yard pin, the 30-yard pin is going to drop down. And that can be an advantage to it, a quick check, because you can look and see how many pins you have on the animal at one time. So like if I can fit all my pins within the kill zone, that 6-inch circle. I know it's close. It doesn't matter which pin I pick, because they're all good shots. Now I start moving out further and further, and now maybe my 20 and my 50-yard pin, one is the belly, and one's at the spine. Now I know that's a little bit longer deer. I need to move up, and I get further and further. So, now if the deer only brackets my 20 and 30-yard pin, I know that's too far to shoot. As you get older, I can't see it that far. So long range shooting, as you get older, gets tougher and tougher, because you can't see your target clearly to know where you're actually at and what the pins are actually doing. So that can be coming to an advantage when you have, as your eyesight changes, one pin, one to pick, and then you just have to, it's further out, you have time. And that's the other thing with a single pin is, if the target is further range, you're going to have more time to adjust. So set up for your close range. And if they come out further, less times you'll have time, because they're further away. You have time. You can adjust that to that range that you guess at. Now, if you have time to range find it, then you know exactly where it's at. You can adjust it right there, make your shot. Something you can practice. Go to what they call 3D targets. You have different animals at different ranges. They could be deer, they could be rabbits, they could be coyotes, they could be dinosaurs, bears, antelope, all the different kind of animals. I've even there were fish. I've seen some that were a fish target, and they're different ranges. So use those 3D ranges, go on those to develop your skills for judging yardage. A lot of them don't allow you to use rangefinders, so you have to guess it on yourself. And if you do have a rangefinder, don't use it until after you haven't made the shot. So make your shot, judge that yardage, and then make your shot, see where it went. If it didn't go where you thought it was, range it, see, okay, I was on under target. It was just me that made the bad shot, executed a bad shot. So that's some of the things I wanted to go over. I know I've had a few questions in a couple of the groups that I've been in, especially on archerytalk101.com is a website I have. The Facebook group, Archery Talk 101, is a Facebook group where we talk about different things like that. And I know I've had questions like this in the group. So I thought this might make a good information to go over some of this stuff. Now, I may even put together a video showing the different ways when you can shoot, what affects the different ranges, how far off you're off with one of my bows. But for here on the podcast, I can't really show that. So I just kind of have to explain it. So what you want to do, make sure you go through, know where your pin goes, and know how to judge yardage. It's easy to judge yardage. Take 20 yards, mark it off so you know exactly how far 20 yards is, and then walk it, count your steps, walk it back, count your steps, keep walking it till you know exactly how many steps you use to get that 20 yards. Now, what I do, instead of counting every step, I'm going to say start off with my left foot, my right foot. That's 1, left, right, 2, all the way out to where I go. I know, so 11 and a half of my steps is 20 yards. So if I'm setting up my tree stand, it's like, oh, there's a spot. I think that's where I can step it off. Now, it may not be exactly right, but I'm going to be close enough that it's not going to make that much difference, because I've stepped it off so many times that I know that's how my stride is. Now, when you start getting heavy clothes on, your stride's going to shorten. You start getting into snow, walking on snow. Here in Nebraska, we have snow sometimes during hunting season, and your steps going to be a little bit different. So get used to judging that yardage. Use the rangefinder, verify that you judged it correctly, and try those different ranges, because you're going to have to look at how does your bow shoot with you shooting it at a range different than what your pin's set for. And once you figure that out, then you'll be able to go out there, set your pin at 20, and you know what to do if it's at 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, wherever it is, you're going to know what to do on how to make that shot so you don't miss that shot of a lifetime. So those that want to get a little bit more information on how to make sure it's not your shooting form, I have a coaching program that's taught online with some videos to watch prior, and then you'll upload videos, and then I'll critique them, and then we'll get on a live Zoom call, and we'll actually talk one-on-one, and we'll be able to watch you shooting and make corrections live. And I'll leave a link into a form. You get a free 15-minute consultation call. Just fill out that form, and then once you get that form filled out, I'll send you a link to my calendar. You can book a free 15-minute call, and we can talk about is coaching for you. It may or may not be. We've done at the call. We'll know if it's something it is for you, and it'll work. So we can go through that on that call. The other thing is I mentioned about the archerytalk101.com website is where I post not just these podcasts, but I post any other thing else dealing with archery. If I review a product, that'll be on there. Anything to deal with archery that I come across will be on that website. Then another good place to get a lot of good information is on Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. I'll leave a link in the description for that as well. And on there, you can go in there, and there's all archers talking about archery. There's no links in there, so you don't have to worry about trying to sell you anything. It's all about providing value to the archers, whether you're brand new, haven't even bought your first bow yet, or you have your first bow, just got it, or you're a seasoned archer. We have something for everybody in there. And if you want to upload a video of you shooting, we'll take a look at it. We'll give you some pointers, and maybe we can improve your shooting just a little bit. So I'll leave links to all those in the description below. And once again, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101.